The winter of 395 BCE descended upon the plains of Anatolia with unprecedented fury, transforming the ancient world into a realm of ice and howling wind that would become the stage for one of history's most astonishing military victories. At the Battle of the Pactolus River, near the ancient city of Sardis in what is now western Turkey, a force of approximately 1,500 Spartan veterans under the command of Thibron and his lieutenant Dercylidas faced an overwhelming Persian army estimated at 40,000 men. The Persians, led by the satrap Tissaphernes and supported by countless auxiliary troops from across the vast Achaemenid Empire, had marched with confidence born from their massive numerical advantage, expecting to sweep away the Greek expeditionary force that had been harassing Persian territories in the wake of Sparta's victory in the Peloponnesian War. The Spartans, however, were no ordinary soldiers. These were survivors of decades of continuous warfare, men who had endured the brutal Agage training system from childhood, warriors whose entire existence had been dedicated to the perfection of martial prowess. Each man wore the crimson cloak that marked him as a member of the most feared military force in the ancient world, and each carried with him the legacy of Thermopylae, where 300 of their brothers had held the Persian Empire at bay. As the storm clouds gathered overhead and the first snowflakes began to fall, these hardened veterans prepared themselves not merely for battle, but for the kind of calculated violence that would echo through the centuries. The Persian forces, drawn from warmer climates and lacking the conditioning of their Spartan adversaries, began to suffer almost immediately as temperatures plummeted. Their lightly armored cavalry, typically the terror of ancient battlefields, found their horses stumbling on ice-slicked ground, while infantry units from Mesopotamia and Egypt shivered in tunics designed for desert warfare. Tissaphernes, a cunning and experienced commander who had once betrayed Cyrus the Younger to his death, recognized the danger but pressed forward nonetheless, believing that sheer numbers would overwhelm any weather-related disadvantages. The Spartans, by contrast, thrived in conditions that would have broken lesser men, their legendary discipline transforming potential disaster into tactical opportunity. Thibron had positioned his forces with the strategic acumen that characterized Spartan military leadership, choosing ground that negated the Persian cavalry advantage while maximizing the effectiveness of the Greek phalanx formation. The hoplite phalanx, that revolutionary military formation that had dominated Mediterranean warfare for centuries, consisted of heavily armored infantrymen standing shoulder to shoulder in ranks, typically 8 men deep, each warrior protecting the man to his left with his massive bronze-faced shield while thrusting forward with an 8-foot spear. The Spartan version of this formation was perfection itself, drilled into soldiers from their 7th year of life through countless hours of synchronized movement until the entire unit moved as a single, lethal organism. As the blizzard intensified, visibility dropped to mere yards, but the Spartans maintained formation through muscle memory and the subtle sounds of their fellows' breathing and footfalls, skills honed through years of training in all manner of conditions. The Persian forces, meanwhile, began to lose cohesion as units became separated in the whiteout conditions, their commanders unable to maintain visual contact with subordinate formations. Tissaphernes attempted to deploy his forces in the traditional Persian manner, with cavalry on the flanks and a deep center of infantry drawn from throughout the empire, but the storm disrupted these careful arrangements. Persian arrows, typically launched in massive volleys that darkened the sky, lost most of their effectiveness as bowstrings became damp and winds deflected their flight paths. The Persian cavalry, those mounted warriors who had conquered an empire stretching from India to Egypt, found themselves nearly useless as their horses refused to charge across the treacherous, ice-covered terrain. The Spartans recognized this moment of enemy weakness with the predatory instincts of born warriors. On the signal of the war trumpet, the Spartan phalanx began its advance, moving with the inexorable precision of a bronze-tipped tide, each step synchronized through years of practice until the sound of 1,500 feet striking the frozen earth in unison was like the drumbeat of approaching doom. The front rank lowered their spears into the attack position, presenting a wall of iron points that gleamed dully through the swirling snow, while those behind prepared to step forward the instant a man fell, maintaining the integrity of the formation that was the key to phalanx warfare. The initial contact between the forces was catastrophic for the Persians, whose loosely organized infantry formations shattered against the bronze wall of Spartan shields like waves against coastal rocks. The Spartans fought with an economy of motion born from lifelong training, each thrust of the spear calculated to penetrate vital areas, each shield bash-timed to create openings in enemy defenses. The Persian infantry, brave men drawn from a dozen nations and cultures, fought desperately but found themselves unable to match the cohesion and brutal efficiency of their adversaries. In phalanx warfare, individual heroics mattered little compared to unit cohesion, and no army in the ancient world could match the Spartans in this regard. As Persian units broke and fled, they found themselves running into their own reinforcements in the blinding snow, creating cascades of panic that rippled through the massive army. Tissaphernes attempted to rally his forces, riding through the storm and exhorting his men to stand firm. But the combination of the weather and the remorseless Spartan advance proved too much. Persian cavalrymen, their horses panicked by the conditions and the carnage, trampled their own infantry in attempts to escape the killing ground. The Spartans pressed forward, maintaining their formation even as they advanced over corpses and wounded men, the discipline of their line never wavering. Contemporary accounts, though fragmentary, speak of Persian blood turning the snow crimson across acres of battlefield, of the screams of wounded men lost in the howling wind, of a slaughter so complete that survivors spoke of it with horror for generations. The Spartan warriors, many of them veterans of countless battles across decades of warfare, dispatched their enemies with the cold efficiency of men who viewed war not as glory, but as craft to be perfected. Hour after hour the battle continued as the Spartans systematically destroyed the Persian army, piece by piece, their bronze-clad formations emerging from the snow like vengeful spirits to strike at disorganized enemy units before disappearing again into the storm. Persian commanders lost control of their forces entirely as units fled in all directions, many becoming lost in the blizzard and perishing from exposure as much as from Spartan spears. Tissaphernes himself barely escaped with his life, abandoning his army to flee back to Sardis with a handful of surviving cavalry. By nightfall, as the storm finally began to abate, the battlefield was a scene of unimaginable devastation, with thousands of Persian dead scattered across the frozen plain, while the Spartan force had suffered minimal casualties, perhaps fewer than 100 killed or seriously wounded. The aftermath of the Battle of the Pactolus River sent shockwaves throughout the Persian Empire and established Spartan military dominance in Anatolia for years to come, demonstrating once again the supremacy of discipline and training over numerical superiority. The Spartans spent the following day systematically stripping the battlefield of armor and weapons, a fortune in bronze and iron that would equip allied Greek cities and mercenary forces throughout the region. Persian prestige, already damaged by defeats in previous wars with the Greek city-states, suffered another devastating blow as word spread of how a tiny Spartan force had annihilated an army 25 times its size. Tissaphernes, once considered among the most capable Persian commanders, found his reputation in ruins, and within a few years he would be executed by the Persian king for his failures. The battle demonstrated the fundamental vulnerabilities in the Persian military system, which relied on massive conscript armies drawn from conquered peoples who lacked the motivation and training of professional soldiers like the Spartans. It also highlighted the genius of Spartan tactical thinking, as Thibron had deliberately positioned his forces in a location where weather conditions would favor his disciplined troops while devastating the less prepared Persian army. The victory allowed the Spartans to expand their operations throughout western Anatolia, liberating Greek cities from Persian control and establishing a network of alliances that would complicate Persian ambitions in the region for decades. More broadly, the battle reinforced the Greek cultural narrative of Western military superiority over Eastern forces, a theme that would echo through Western military thought for millennia. The Spartans who fought that day added another glorious chapter to their city's military legacy, proving that the descendants of Leonidas could still achieve the impossible when faced with overwhelming odds. They returned to their camps that night, having written their names into immortality, 1,500 men who had accomplished what seemed impossible, crushing 40,000 enemies through a combination of superior training, tactical brilliance, and the kind of iron discipline that could maintain formation even in the midst of a howling blizzard. The Battle of the Pactolus River remains a testament to the power of professional military training, tactical flexibility, and the willingness to embrace harsh conditions as an ally rather than an obstacle, lessons that remain relevant to military thinkers even in the modern era. For the Spartans themselves, it was simply another victory in a long tradition of excellence. Another day when the Crimson Cloaks had triumphed against impossible odds, another confirmation that their brutal training system and warrior culture could produce soldiers unmatched in the ancient world.